Warning! You're about to experience Metamodernism Uncensored, a podcast for diagnosing the cultural rot of the postmodern world and searching for real truth. It's time to question everything, especially yourself.
Welcome to Metamodernism Uncensored, the podcast for detangling Gorgon's knot of contemporary postmodernism and attempting to break through to some sort of metamodern synthesis.
Yeah, and today we had a seriously massive knot to untangle.
We really do. So imagine you're standing on the edge of the Sahara Desert, right?
Okay.
You point at miles and miles of blistering dry sand, and you demand that everyone around you treat it like a raging river.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You insist they put on life jackets, you start handing out paddles, and if anyone refuses to get in your imaginary boat, you label them a bigot.
Right.
That is essentially the premise of what we're looking at today. It's this blistering new essay published this very morning, July 2, 2026.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly.
Well,
and it argues that modern society isn't just doing this, river in the desert thing with landscapes.
Right.
The author claims we're doing it with our entire $39 trillion economy, our fundamental biology, and really the structural laws of human civilization itself.
It's a huge claim.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into a Substack piece by a writer using the pseudonym Metamodern Listener. And the title is, get this, "Never before in history has man been more a god than he is today."
I mean, the title alone, right, it just gives you a sense of the sheer gravitational pull of this essay.
Oh, totally.
It is this massive, sweeping piece of cultural critique. The author is essentially putting the entire modern era on trial.
Yeah, they really hold nothing back.
No, they don't. They're arguing that we have completely severed our tether to objective reality. Like they are diagnosing society with the systemic intentional delusion.
A delusion that we're choosing.
Exactly. Choosing to live in what the text repeatedly calls a collaborative fiction.
A collaborative fiction. Man, okay, before we get too deep into the weeds, we have to set the ground rules for this deep dive.
For sure, because this is going to get spicy.
It is incredibly polarizing.
Yeah.
This piece relies heavily on hyperbole, on irony, and this sort of, elevated Victorian sarcasm.
It reads like a brilliant, furious philosopher who is just wielding a thesaurus like a blunt instrument.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
So, to be absolutely clear to you, the listener, we are not here to endorse this author's politically charged worldview.
Right. Nor are we here to condemn it.
Exactly. We are not taking sides today. Our mission is just to dismantle the engine of this essay and see how it runs.
Yeah, we want to explore the mechanics of the critique. Like, how does the author connect the dots between a meme coin on the blockchain and, the restructuring of human gender?
Right. What is the underlying logic binding those things together?
So, to understand that logic, we kind of have to start where the author starts.
Which is their philosophical autopsy of the past.
Yeah, exactly. They draw this really severe contrast between historical civilization and where we are in 2026.
Right.
They describe the past's reliance on objective physical reality as a, quote, quaint superstition.
A quaint superstition. I mean, let's just pause and unpack the vocabulary there because it is dripping with condescension.
Oh, absolutely soaking in it.
But they are aiming that condescension at the modern reader, right? Not at the past. The author is saying that previous ages labored under this incredibly basic belief that the world existed independently of our feelings about it.
Right, and they provide this fascinating list of what they call mute objects.
Mute objects. I love that phrase.
It's so good. They say past generations consulted these mute objects with absolute authority, and they list rocks, rivers, chromosomes, and ledgers.
Okay, wait. The word mute is doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Right, because a rock doesn't care about your self-esteem.
Exactly.
A river flows downhill regardless of your political ideology. Right. And a mathematical ledger, well, it shows that you are bankrupt whether you find that fact offensive or not.
Those objects have unquestionable silent authority.
Yes.
The author is painting a picture of an era defined by pure empiricism. You observe the physical world and you submit to its constraints.
Like building a bridge based on the immutable laws of physics, not on how you wish gravity operated.
Right. But then the philosophical pivot to the present day is where the author really brings out the knives.
Oh, yeah, they go in hard. They claim that in 2026, society believes it has transcended this reliance on facts.
Which they derisively label childish literalism.
Right. They're essentially saying that To believe in a physical, independent reality today is considered immature by the elites.
Which is wild.
Instead, the author argues we have embraced this extreme constructivism.
Okay, let's clarify that for a second. Constructivism is a real, deeply established philosophical concept.
Oh, definitely. It is the idea that human beings don't just passively receive reality, we build it.
Through language, social agreements, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Like,
Right.
a border between two countries is a social construct. It isn't written in the soil. We drew a line on a map and we all agreed it matters.
But the author isn't just pointing out standard sociological constructs here.
No, not at all. They are arguing we have taken this to a pathological extreme. Like, we believe we can literally speak the physical world into existence.
The essay states we act as gods, demanding that the external world conform to our speech, rather than making our speech conform to the external world.
And that brings us to the profound societal risk the author is highlighting.
Yeah.
If language is historically a tool used to point to a shared external object, like two people pointing at an apple and agreeing it is an apple,
Yeah.
what happens to human communication when words are totally decoupled from external objects?
It breaks down. The text argues that our language is no longer a descriptive tool at all. It has devolved into a broadcast of the speaker's internal emotional weather. Yeah. Emotional weather. That is such a vivid phrase. But okay, I have to push back here for a second.
Go for it.
Let's look at the arc of human history. The author seems to think that demanding the world conform to our desires is some brand new modern arrogance.
Right.
But hasn't human progress always been about bending nature to our will? I mean, we didn't just accept the mute authority of a disease. We manipulated biology to invent antibiotics.
Yeah.
We didn't accept the mute authority of a river. We dammed it up to power massive cities. Is the author romanticizing a past where humans were just helpless victims of nature and maybe confusing innovation with delusion?
It's a fair question, but the distinction the author makes, and it's subtle, but it's vital, is between engineering the physical world and denying the physical world outright.
Okay, explain that.
When you build a dam, you are manipulating the river, but you are acutely aware of the water's weight, its force, the laws of fluid dynamics.
Right, you have to respect the physics or the dam breaks.
Exactly. You respect the physical substrate. The author is describing modern society like a software program where we have lost the original source code.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, and instead of trying to find the code or fix the root architecture, we are just constantly overriding the system's error messages with new, increasingly convoluted patches, and just hoping the server doesn't catch fire.
We aren't manipulating reality anymore. We are actively legislating that reality doesn't exist.
Right, and to prove this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate, the author immediately points to the one place where reality historically bites the hardest.
The global economy.
Exactly, the global economy.
This is where the essay shifts gears from philosophy into just a brutal dissection of modern finance. And they use the 2026 economy as their smoking gun to prove that society has embraced what they call infinite plasticity.
They start at the macro level, looking at the United States carrying a $39 trillion national debt.
39 trillion. It's hard to even conceptualize that number.
It really is. But the author's grievance isn't merely the staggering size of the number. It's the fundamental nature of the medium that debt is measured in.
Right. They emphasize that this debt is held in a fiat currency that is tethered to absolutely nothing.
Nothing physical.
Yeah, it's not backed by gold. It's not backed by silver or land. The author sarcastically notes it isn't even backed by the realistic promise of future tax receipts.
Because mathematically, no one expects that debt to actually be paid down through taxation.
Right. We have to pause and look at the history of fiat currency to really grasp the author's disdain here.
Yeah, let's do that. Because prior to 1971, the US dollar was tethered to the gold standard.
Meaning you could theoretically exchange your paper money for a physical amount of gold held in a vault.
Exactly. The value of the currency had a physical friction to it. It was anchored to an element that had to be mined from the earth with actual human labor.
But the author is pointing out that today a dollar is simply a spectral unit. It has value purely because the government says it does, and because we all just sort of wake up every morning and collectively agree to accept it.
Right.
But wait, if I can play devil's advocate again.
Please do.
The author acts like a dollar bill is a tragic loss of objective reality. But wasn't the gold standard also just a collaborative fiction?
How do you mean?
Well, gold is just a shiny rock. It has some industrial uses now, but historically its immense value was entirely based on human psychology. We just universally agreed the shiny rock was precious.
That is true.
So why does the author treat a digital dollar as this terrifying leap into the abyss, but treats a historical gold coin as if it possesses some unshakable mute authority?
It's a great point, and honestly, that is the most common critique of the author's financial stance. Money has always been a technology of belief.
Exactly.
But the author's counterargument hinges on that concept of friction I mentioned earlier. Gold has physical friction. You cannot just command 1,000,000 tons of gold into existence overnight by typing on a keyboard.
Okay.
What terrifies the author about 2026 is the frictionless nature of the modern economic fiction.
They call it phantom money buying phantom goods.
Yes.
And this is where they drill down into the micro levels, specifically targeting the crypto and NFT markets.
They define meme coins in a way that just strips away all the Silicon Valley marketing gloss.
It's savage.
It really is. The text describes a meme coin as nothing more than a few lines of code, held up entirely by the collective willingness of strangers on the internet to pretend that this specific code is scarce.
We really need to explain the mechanics of that for the listener because it perfectly proves the author's point about constructivism.
Go for it.
A digital file, by its nature, can be copied infinitely. To make a digital file valuable, you have to invent artificial scarcity.
Right.
You have to write a blockchain protocol, a decentralized ledger that mathematically forces a limit on how many of these digital tokens can exist.
Yeah.
You are literally engineering a fiction of scarcity in an environment of infinite abundance.
And then society takes those spectral meme coins and exchanges them for what the author views as the ultimate phantom good.
The non-fungible token.
The NFT. And the text specifically calls out NFTs depicting bored apes or pixelated punks.
I love how coldly the author assesses an NFT. They point out that owning a picture of a pixelated monkey confers no shelter.
Yep.
It provides no nutrition. It offers absolutely no legal claim over anything in the physical three-dimensional world.
It just gives you a cryptographic receipt that allows you to point to a URL on a screen and declare ownership. And the author highlights the sheer scale of this phenomenon. The market capitalization for these URLs routinely exceeds the gross domestic product of mid-sized physical nations.
Nations that have actual factories producing physical goods.
Exactly. Farms growing physical food, millions of physical human beings laboring every day.
The author writes that in any previous century, treating a cartoon ape as more valuable than a nation's agricultural output would have been diagnosed as a collective lunacy reserved for asylums.
Wow.
Yeah, but today it is reported on financial television networks with absolute solemnity.
Right.
Like, they track the price of a digital punk with the same seriousness as the price of a barrel of crude oil.
Which brings us to the author's critique of the regulatory bodies, specifically the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Oh, right?
The text refers to this as regulatory theater.
This part is fascinating because the author doesn't just blame the retail investors. They blame the entire institutional framework. They argue that financial masters no longer even bother hiding their frauds. They rebrand classic Ponzi schemes as decentralized finance instruments.
And we should clarify, a Ponzi scheme relies on paying early investors with the capital of new investors, rather than from actual profit generated by a productive enterprise.
Right.
The author argues that much of the yield in these digital ecosystems functions exactly this way. But we have draped it in the language of high finance. We call it staking or yield farming.
And the SEC, according to the author, just smiles benevolently.
Right.
The essay describes regulators as acting like parents watching toddlers play with an imaginary tea set.
That's hilarious.
It is. But the underlying logic here is devastating. They are saying if the fiat dollar is a social construct, and the blockchain token is a social construct, and the value of the JPEG is a social construct,
then the regulatory agency itself is just another social construct.
boom, it's an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail.
The author views the financial system as a closed circuit of pure fiction, entirely detached from human labor or physical resources.
It is the ultimate manifestation of demanding the world conform to our speech. We say a line of code is worth $50,000. And so it is.
And this sets the stage perfectly for the most controversial, politically charged section of the entire essay.
Yeah, buckle up.
Because the author doesn't leave this framework of infinite plasticity quarantined in the financial sector.
No, they take the exact same philosophical argument, the rejection of objective reality, and apply it directly to human biology.
As we transition into this, I really want to remind you, the listener, of our baseline objective here.
Yes, neutrality.
The text now moves into the deconstruction of biological sex. We are going to analyze how the author uses this cultural flashpoint to serve their overarching thesis, focusing purely on the rhetorical strategy they deploy.
Okay, so the author takes aim at biological sex, which they refer to as an ancient and impertinent binary.
Impertinent, what a word choice.
Right. They argue that modern society has completely discarded the biological, chromosomal reality of sex, replacing it with a spectrum, a feeling, or what the text calls a vibe.
The author utilizes a very specific hypothetical scenario to anchor this critique in practical reality. They introduce an individual who, yesterday, possessed XY chromosomes and answered to the name Robert.
Okay.
Today, the same individual declares their identity to be Roberta.
The essay then tracks the institutional shockwaves of this single self-declaration. Because Roberta has spoken this new reality into existence, society must immediately rearrange its physical structures to accommodate it.
Right, so Roberta now competes in women's sports. Roberta occupies women's prisons.
And the author focuses on the coercive element of this transition. It isn't merely a request for social politeness. It is an institutional mandate.
Exactly. The text points out that if institutions refuse to rewrite their medical and legal records to validate Roberta's self-declaration, those institutions are accused of committing an act of violence.
Which is a massive escalation in language. Refusing to validate a subjective feeling is equated to physical harm.
And the text goes further, noting the sheer volume of this deconstruction. The author writes that society has rapidly manufactured at least 33 additional genders.
With these new categories comes a vast new infrastructure of language and compliance.
Oh, yeah. New pronouns must be memorized, new flags are raised, and corporate sensitivity training is mandated to ensure total compliance across the workforce.
I want to look closely at a specific quote here because it really reveals the author's tone. The author remarks that these new identities are invented quickly, quote, between lunch and the afternoon Zoom call.
That phrasing is so deliberate.
It is brilliant and highly cynical. By framing profound human identity in the banal language of a middle management corporate schedule, the author is stripping away all the gravity and reverence that usually surrounds these topics.
They are equating the generation of new genders to a fashion house churning out a new line of summer clothing.
But let's pause and genuinely scrutinize the author's logic here. Why does the author deliberately place the critique of crypto-economics side by side with the critique of transgender identities?
They place them together because they believe both stem from the exact same root pathology. The modern refusal to accept what the essay calls the tyranny of the given.
The tyranny of the given. That phrase is incredible.
It really is.
It implies that physical reality is inherently oppressive. Like, the scarcity of natural resources is a tyrant. The biological reality of our chromosomes is a tyrant. And modern society views itself as a liberator, breaking the chains of physical reality.
The author asserts that society has mistakenly equated this rejection of the physical world with superior compassion.
Right.
In this new framework, if you instantly validate a newly invented identity, you are a compassionate, enlightened being. But if you hesitate, if you dare to consult those mute objects like biology or physiology, you are instantly branded as a reactionary.
You are a dinosaur clinging to an obsolete version of the world.
Exactly.
Okay, I see the structural symmetry the author is building, but this is where their argument feels incredibly brittle to me. Well, by equating human gender identity to a pixelated ape NFT, aren't they just flattening human consciousness out of the equation entirely?
I see what you mean.
A meme coin has no internal life. It doesn't experience psychological distress. It doesn't navigate complex social friction. It doesn't feel pain. A human being struggling with gender dysphoria does.
Right.
Is the author just using the obvious absurdity of the crypto casino as a rhetorical Trojan horse to attack marginalized groups?
That is arguably the most potent critique of the author's methodology. The framework of objective physical reality versus subjective collaborative fiction is a very clean, very binary way to look at the world.
But human psychology is notoriously messy. It doesn't fit neatly into a ledger.
Exactly. The author's argument requires treating internal human experience as nothing more than, as they said earlier, emotional weather. Something fleeting and ultimately irrelevant compared to the hard data of chromosomes.
It's like they are viewing human civilization entirely through the lens of a biologist's spreadsheet. If you can't measure it in a lab, it has no bearing on reality. But human beings are meaning-making machines. Our subjective experiences are our reality.
The author would counter that while subjective experience is real to the individual, society cannot function if it allows subjective experience to overwrite objective, shared reality in matters of law, medicine, and physical safety.
Okay, yeah.
Their concern is the point at which the internal feeling is given absolute, unquestionable veto power over the external, observable world.
And if we take the author's warning seriously, if we're trying to detangle this and find that metamodern synthesis we talked about in the intro, we really have to look at the extreme end of this logic.
Right, like where does it lead?
The essay suggests that feeding a societal delusion is deeply unhealthy. It's asking the listener, essentially, don't reject your eyes and ears just because society tells you up is down or down is up, or that fiat currency is miraculously propping up trillions of dollars in debt. The text implicitly argues that a girl cannot just call herself a cat or a boy or anything else and simply make it so by declaration.
Which is a very blunt way of putting it.
It is, but if we follow their logic, it would be as unhealthy to feed that delusion as it would be for a doctor to tell a woman suffering from anorexia that she looks just fine.
That's an intense analogy.
But it fits the author's premise perfectly. If the anorexic patient thinks she's healthy, so she must be healthy. No, feeding that delusion is dangerous. The author is saying truth is the medicine we need, even if it tastes bitter.
And that collision between the internal and the external is what leads us into the climax of the essay.
Right.
The author takes their economic critique and their biological critique and smashes them together to describe the current state of civilization. They called it the postmodern circus.
The postmodern circus. The text paints a highly specific satirical portrait to illustrate this circus in action. They return to their hypothetical character, Roberta.
Right. The essay asks us to imagine Roberta utilizing her newly liberated, self-declared identity. She goes out to the world and deploys digital tokens, which, as we establish, are arbitrary declarations of financial value into decentralized ledgers.
Yeah.
And through the magic of yield farming, she doubles her arbitrary wealth in 24 hours.
The critical question the author asks is, how does society react to this spectacle?
How do they?
Society does not look at Roberta and see a gambler operating in a rigged, profoundly absurd casino. According to the author, society looks at Roberta and calls her a genius.
Wow.
She's celebrated because she has successfully navigated and mastered the only metric that matters in the postmodern circus.
And the essay defines that metric very clearly. It is the capacity to will value into existence and to compel others to ratify that will.
It's pure, unadulterated willpower. It's almost Nietzschean.
Totally.
It has nothing to do with discovering truth or producing tangible goods. It is entirely about forcing your customized version of reality onto the populace and demanding a round of applause.
And when critics, whom the author sarcastically refers to as simple minds, point out that a civilization running on imaginary money and subjective biology is inherently unstable, the author argues that these critics are entirely missing the point of the new era.
Because stability is a relic. The author writes that modern society no longer values stability. Stability was a preoccupation of the old, reality-based empirical order. Today, we exist in a state of permanent revolution.
The concept of permanent revolution means that no fact is ever settled. Every scientific category, every historical narrative, every economic principle is provisional.
It's all subject to immediate revision based on the trending demands of the day.
The essay then outlines a chilling set of predictions for how this permanent revolution handles inevitable crises. Because eventually, these fictions have to collide with math and physics.
The author's predictions demonstrate a profound cynicism about the ability of modern institutions to self-correct. Just look at the economic example they provide.
Right. They predict that when the $39 trillion national debt can no longer be serviced when the math finally breaks, we will not engage in austerity.
Yeah.
We will not produce more goods to pay it off. Instead, the author says we will simply redenominate the debt by statute.
The government will just legally declare that what used to be $1 trillion is now equal to $1. They will just change the definition of the numbers.
And when subjective gender declarations inevitably clash with observable physiology, for instance, in the administration of gender-specific medical treatments or in the legal definitions of sex-based rights, the author predicts society will not revert to biological categories.
No, the text says we will simply rewrite the dictionary. We will change the definitions of the words medical and legal so that they accommodate the fiction.
Finally, when the crypto market inevitably collapses, wiping out billions in pension funds and retail investments, the author predicts the financial elites won't blame the imaginary assets.
They will blame a lack of imagination. They will claim the collapse happened because the regulations weren't flexible enough, and they will demand the creation of even more complex, even more imaginary financial instruments to paper over the losses.
I mean, think about the historical precedent for how societies handle failure. Historically, when a civilization's beliefs hit the hard wall of reality, whether that's an agricultural famine caused by poor farming practices or an economic depression caused by bad policy, the society adjusts its beliefs to survive.
Right. They recognize the wall and they change course.
But the author is arguing that in 2026, when our institutions hit a wall, they refuse to turn the steering wheel. Instead, they just redefine the word wall to mean open road, and they press the accelerator to the floor.
It is maddening to think about. It feels like trying to play a board game with someone who just changes the rules whenever they start losing.
Oh, exactly.
You land on their property, and they suddenly declare, actually, in my new version of the rules, you landing here means you owe me all your money.
That is the perfect analogy for the infinite plasticity the author is describing. The rules only exist to serve the desires of the person currently speaking.
But we have to examine the systemic mechanism driving this.
Yeah.
Because the author points out that this circus isn't just a fringe internet movement.
No, it's everywhere.
It is actively applauded by venture capitalists, by mainstream prestige journalists, and by Nobel laureates. Why?
What else?
Is the author suggesting there is a smoke-filled room of elites plotting to destroy objective reality?
No, the text doesn't rely on a coordinated conspiracy theory. It describes something far more insidious. A systemic incentive structure that creates a mass psychological contagion.
Interesting.
It is the emperor's new clothes, but scaled up to a global civilization.
How does that incentive structure work in practice?
Think about a venture capitalist whose entire portfolio relies on crypto valuations, or our university president whose funding relies on maintaining a specific social narrative.
Okay.
Their wealth, their social status, and their institutional power are entirely dependent on the collaborative fiction being treated as absolute truth.
So if a Nobel laureate stands up and points out that the emperor is naked, that the meme coin is worthless, and the biology is observable, they don't get rewarded for telling the truth.
They get excommunicated. To break the fiction is to immediately lose your seat at the table.
You are branded a reactionary, a bigot, a victim of childish literalism.
Therefore, the easiest, safest, and vastly more profitable path is to just nod along with the fashionable voices in the room.
Right. And you brought this up earlier about being a killjoy. The author asks, does it make sense to pop someone's bubble when they are living in a world of their own making?
Yeah. Is being impolite for their own good beneficial?
Exactly. Because if you do pop the bubble, you will be ostracized for not going along with the crowd.
But you know, if you look at history, the greatest thinkers always warned against going along with the crowd when the crowd is delusional.
Very true.
I mean, Mark Twain, George Orwell, Plato, Socrates, they all essentially said it's best not to give into fantasy, but to live in the light.
Which perfectly brings us to Plato's case. The essay doesn't explicitly name-drop it, but the whole premise is screaming Plato's cave.
Oh, 100%. Society can't perpetually live in Plato's cave and choose to see only what it wants to see, just staring at shadows on the wall.
And that brings us to the essay's grand finale, which reads like an autopsy report for the entire Age of Enlightenment. The author calls this era the post-truth Enlightenment.
The author summarizes their thesis by stating that we have systematically deconstructed everything that used to anchor human civilization. We have deconstructed sex, money, merit, borders, crime, and childhood.
And the final superstition left to destroy, the ultimate boss battle for postmodernism, is the idea that any of those categories ever corresponded to an external reality in the first place.
Right. The author says that destroying the memory of reality is the final goal.
The text outlines what it calls the official story of 2026. This is the narrative that the institutions tell themselves to justify the chaos.
According to this official story, the societal fracturing we are experiencing isn't a sign of decline. We aren't a confused, failing civilization. We are actually highly enlightened.
The author sarcastically writes that we are post-truth, post-reality, and therefore post-embarrassment.
Post-embarrassment is a crucial concept here. If there is no objective truth, you can never be proven wrong.
Wow.
And if you can never be proven wrong, you never have to feel the embarrassment of failure. It creates a perfectly sealed, unfalsifiable ideological bubble.
When this system produces undeniable, catastrophic failures, Massive corporate bankruptcies, medical scandals, institutional collapse. The official story just brushes them off. The text says society rebrands these disasters as merely the birth pangs of a higher consciousness.
It's a brilliant psychological defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But the author does not believe this bubble can float forever. We really must look at the very final sentence of this essay, because it shifts the entire piece from a cultural critique into a very dark warning.
Right. Let me read the exact final line of the essay. Quote, "That, at least, is the official story in the venerable year 2026. One awaits with mindful interest the revisions that will be required by 2027. End quote.
Let's dissect the weight of that conclusion. Throughout this piece, the author has detailed how society is successfully defying gravity. But fundamentally, the author believes that gravity, meaning the immutable laws of economics, biology, and history, must eventually assert itself.
Like a cartoon. Like the roadrunner running off the cliff. He can pedal his feet in midair indefinitely, or at least for a few seconds.
Right.
But eventually he has to look down. Gravity must catch up with him.
Precisely. Reality has a way of catching up to mankind. Think of the volcano erupting at Pompeii. As much as the elites may have chosen to ignore the reality, it blew anyway and destroyed them all.
By stating they are waiting for the revisions of 2027, the author is predicting an imminent, massive reckoning.
A society built entirely on infinite plasticity and collaborative fictions will inevitably snap under the weight of physical reality.
Reality is like hitting a brick wall. It will happen, and whether or not we brace ourselves is entirely up to us.
The bill for all this make-believe is going to come due, whether it takes the form of a hyperinflationary economic collapse or just a complete breakdown of institutional trust.
The author says we have replaced the difficult work of description with the congenial work of invention. It is the ultimate expression of fake it till you make it, but applied to the bedrock of human civilization.
Yeah.
But here is the question that leaves me hanging. Does the author offer any sort of off-ramp? Is there a policy prescription, a way to defuse this bomb before 2027? Or is this just a beautifully written eulogy for common sense?
The essay is entirely devoid of solutions. It offers no political action items, no hopeful rallying cry. It functions purely as a fatalistic diagnosis.
So no hope at all from the author.
The author's position appears to be that the institutional contagion is too deep. The financial incentives to maintain the illusion are too powerful. And the social penalty for speaking the truth is too severe.
So what's left to do?
The only action left for the sane individual is to observe the absurdity with mindful interest and just brace for the impact.
Wow. We have covered a staggering amount of philosophical and cultural ground today. To synthesize this journey, we have explored a highly critical perspective that views modern society's approach to everything from digital currency to biological identity not as progress, but as a dangerous systemic detachment from objective truth.
The author sees a civilization desperately trying to rewrite the rules of reality to suit its own emotional weather.
And as we talked about with that metamodern synthesis, maybe the takeaway here is that metamodernism allows us to face our demons and our lies head-on while pushing forward to the truth. Because truth is the best medicine we have for the postmodern world.
And regardless of where you stand on the specific politically charged examples the author uses, the underlying question they pose is vital. How much of the world around us is solid ground, and how much is merely a provisional story we have all agreed to stop questioning?
Which brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with. Turning this immense macro-level critique directly onto you, the listener.
Right.
This essay paints a picture of a global system running entirely on agreed-upon fictions. But I want you to apply this to your own life. Think about the structures you rely on daily.
Yeah, think about it.
If the value in your bank account, the social labels that institutions apply to you, and the rules of the society you navigate are all just provisional facts, subject to being rewritten overnight by the most fashionable voices in the room, what happens to the individual who decides to stop pretending?
It's a scary thought.
If reality is no longer a physical landscape we navigate, but just a script constantly being edited by whoever holds the most social power on any given morning who is actually holding the pen in your life, are you walking on solid ground, or are you just playing a high-stakes game of make-believe, hoping the rules don't change while you're in midair? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking for the solid ground, and we will catch you next time.
Well, that was today's episode of Metamodernism Uncensored. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you again next time.